The biggest issue is that the climate there is fundamentally changing. Um, Part of the problem is warmer oceans. And so what you would have had previously was a rainy season right now. That's not what you're seeing, of course. There hasn't been rain there since last March, so, or significant rains. And so every season is now fire season. That's particularly dangerous in the winter when the famous Santa Ana winds kick in. And that's exactly what we're seeing right now. There's no moisture and there's a lot of high wind. That is a disaster for fire.
How do you kind of square that with now trying to understand how this fire started? I'm basically wondering if is that even relevant if the climate just seems like a wildfire is going to be inevitable?
Um, I think maybe for the specifics of how insurance is going to play out and trying to be smarter in the future, knowing how this fire started. But I'll take your greater point, which is I think these fires are going to be much more frequent. There's a great deal of evidence to suggest that. So then what you really have to think on a more global scale is where do we want to build and how do we want to build back so that we're more fire resistant?
Are we? I had a listener write in earlier and ask about, the increase in natural disasters, especially in places like California or Florida, where insurers decreasingly want to take that risk. Are we seeing any kind of monies raised specifically for those states so that other states don't have to continue to help foot the bill?
Well, I'm not sure every state has to continue to foot the bill. Both California and Florida do have state-backed insurance plans of their own. That would be state money. When there are natural catastrophes.
But when they're insolvent, Leslie, we have to chip in, right? Because you're
Yes,
not going to
I
see
do.
the FAIR Plan cover this damage. It's going to be FEMA that jumps in with the bulk of the monies.
Well, the FAIR Plan is allowed to do assessments. The FAIR Plan is not allowed to go bankrupt. So what the FAIR Plan will do is it'll put an assessment on insurance companies, which will have impact nationwide. It will put an assessment on policyholders in California. But yes, I'll agree with the premise that FEMA will get involved, and they are much more involved in places like California and Florida than anywhere else. But increasingly, we're seeing natural disasters have real impact even beyond those places. I think all of us have to ask that question. I mean, a lot of people thought that, for instance, Asheville was climate safe. There were climate scientists living there. Turns out that was a disaster area in the last hurricane. Severe convective storms, which largely affect Dallas, for example, and the middle of the country, are also becoming huge cost centers. So I think climate change will affect all of us. Yes, Florida and California more than most.